So I was after a cheap turntable, just for my own use, and I repaired a Pioneer PL-12D once, and I thought, yeah, this turntable looks really cool, but the prices on eBay for them have gone a bit crazy. So I noticed these Kenwoods, the Kenwood KD-1033, one of which I've repaired in the past, were actually very similar looking to the Pioneer one, and apparently it came out slightly after the Pioneer and is supposedly a slightly better design. Whether it is or not, I don't know. They're very similar inside. But anyway, I found this on eBay for pretty good money. Price seemed about right, so I bought it. So the major thing wrong with it, I mean, it had a bent stylus, but the big problem is the speed seemed a bit high, and I think it's down to the pulley is a little bit lower than it should be. Probably because the rubber motor mounts have shrunk as they've sort of got old, and they're not really at their best anymore. So the bronze bit is the pulley, and I'll take the platter off so we can get a better look at it. So this is the motor spindle, and which the belt sits on. So this dark area here looks like there's probably an old belt on it once that has perished and gone all gooey. So, but you can see it's like an old beer barrel kind of shape. It's wider in the middle than at the ends. That's the 33 RPM speed, and the 45 RPM speed is this much wider diameter one lower down. So I think the problem is because the motor mounts are worn down, are just perished. The motor was sitting a bit lower than it should be, so the belt was right at the top of that pulley rather than on the wide bit, which is causing it to go a little bit too quickly. Now, theoretically, you should be able to I thought I'd be able to move this down a bit just to push the belt down, but it didn't seem to work very well. It just ended up just rubbing on the plastic, so that idea was abandoned. There are two at the bottom here. You can see there's two little screws, tiny little grub screws. One was glued in with screw lock, so I took those out. I had to put a pair of mole grips on one of them just to break the screw lock, because there's not much for a screwdriver to grip. Pulled it off, but there isn't the actual shaft that it bolts to isn't kind of very long, so you can't move it up the shaft very far. So I moved it up as best I could. So then I started investigating what was behind, underneath it. This is a little jig I made actually. I've mended quite a lot of turntables, so I made a jig so I can sort of put the turntable in and work on it without having to work on it upside down. So this is the turntable in the jig. As you can see, it just leans up against the upright bits. So then you've got complete, nice, easy access to inside the unit without having to keep tipping it upside down and risking breaking the arm. So we'll pull the bottom off this and show you what's inside it. Right, so this is the inside of the Kenwood with the bottom removed. It's fair. I mean, a lot of these turntables are all fairly similar, but so we got some switch suppression capacitors on there. Good chunky mains lead. A lot of modern turntables I've looked at have got really rubbishy thin wires inside them. These are good solid ones. So the motor mounts are these kind of grey rubber things. The motor moves around. The idea is that the motor needs to be completely isolated from this metal chassis. So that is now with the screw that's removed on it. So you can see this metal bit here is actually part of this chassis. So the idea is we've got to totally isolate the motor from that. From the metalwork, but the other problem is because these have gone really I think these have shrunk. So when the thing's the right way up, the motor's sitting, more nearer to this fixing screw that it probably did when it was made, which has made the whole shaft, the pulley, lower down.
So in an effort to try and push the motor nearer to the, the top of the turntable, I got some old rubber grommets and fitted that underneath this brown washer to try and just push the thing up a little bit. And I thought that would isolate it as well, but actually it just made it hum. So I just ended up going back to how it actually is fitted. When I say hum, it was a mechanical hum. If you put your ear to the top of the turntable when it's going around, you could hear it making this quiet sort of humming noise. Yeah, it's just kind of all working really now. I've got the speed adjusted as it's still a little tiny bit fast, but it's working as best I think it's ever going to be without a lot more tweaking. But for a cheap turntable, I thought it would do. Incidentally, in the past, I've repaired one of these before, and I replaced the phono cable, and when I refitted it back into this clamp, that also introduced this weird humming noise. And in the end, I had to not use that clamp at all and just cable tied it onto that wooden cross brace, which is weird. So yeah, turntables might kind of look like they're really simple, straightforward things, but there's actually quite a bit of sort of work going into them to make them actually work quietly. Pioneer PL-12D that I repaired once had exactly the same problem. But it was kind of weird, the Pioneer one, because it didn't even hum. It was only when you drop the stylus onto the record, and on a really quiet bit of record, you suddenly became aware there was a lot of humming going on. And that took a lot of fiddling about trying to isolate it. So that concludes the look at this old Trio turntable. It sort of shows the fact that if you're going to buy a second-hand turntable, you're going to have problems with it, so you need to factor that into the cost, because a lot of these second-hand turntables are priced quite high, especially on eBay, and you're probably going to need to spend a bit of time repairing it unless it's been refurbished, and if it has been refurbished, find out what refurbished actually means. This one also had like a bent stylus, but I'd anticipated replacing the stylus and cartridge anyway. So thank you for watching, and please subscribe to the channel to be alerted to new videos.